kind of interesting. Now, don't get excited.
Yeah.
This is just to facilitate paid character boosts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But what it quite literally is new content in TBC.
Yep.
So, I mean, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's not much, but it's the evolution of some changes where they're just going, you know what, we will actually add to this to improve the experience, as they've shown with the other things, with the drums, which may not have been the best choice, but with the world buff changes in classic era servers, as they're calling them, then this is a step of going, you know what? Yeah, we'll break the rules to make this a better experience. Yeah. And it's like they have been very upfront with doing this now. And I think I haven't seen anyone be too mad about any of it.
Same.
I think the no changes crowd have got themselves in the basement of classic and are happy. So some changes as a possibility is here. And then just to be a little bit of a tease, I sort of imagine if you draw this on like a linear scale of like no changes, some changes, that's a growth of infinite. So what's going to happen in future in Wrath Classic? That's maybe a bit unfair to say, but
I mean, what I would personally love the most, because I see this and, you know, what is it literally a way for them to put a macro transaction into TBC Classic? That is what it is. Mm-hmm. But what it also quite literally is stuff in Classic TBC that was not in TBC.
Yes.
And in a way where it is a new quest that your character does. And that gets me so excited. What I would absolutely want the most, and I think this would make it would be so powerful if Blizzard did it. So powerful. And they would almost certainly need to hire up staff and stuff. But let's have a chat. Right, I'm going to present it to you. And it won't be a surprise based on some of the previous weeks, but I think I have a better way of conceptualizing it.
Go.
It is, imagine if they do Classic. It then progresses to 1.12. And we've now finished that run. We do Classic TBC. We move up to 2.3. It has finished its run. What do we then do next? What I would say would be the just most incredible way to give World of Warcraft sustained long-term performance as a business. I think it would be to basically sandboxify Classic and sandboxify TBC. Now, when I say sandboxify, what I basically mean is there is an inherent problem in just adding new raid tiers to Classic or TBC because the numbers will only scale up so high. And after that, they will break and classes will no longer function. Yeah. So they can't just keep on adding new raid tiers and stuff like that. I think instead what they have to do is add more interactivity into the world. So what does it look like for World of Warcraft Classic where they start adding in new reputations?
Okay.
Right? They add in some new reputations. They add in little quest chains, little things here and there. They try to add in some more sandboxy systems. Maybe they just sit there and, you know, they get a team at Blizzard to just play Old School RuneScape for, you know, a few months and to see what drives the player behavior and how that works as an overall sandbox, and then try to apply some of those ideas. Because there are so many players, if you tell them they just get this Classic Plus that's mildly sandboxy where, you know, you go through your Classic experience, but then at the end, you know, you're there with your fully geared up character in Azeroth, and there's actually stuff to do, and there's factions going on, and that RuneScape-y element that has allowed people to keep on playing RuneScape forever.
Yeah, adding an end game in essence.
It's a bit of an end game, but something like that. Now, if you then tell people you can do that in Outland, to anyone who started the game in the Burning Crusade and fell in love with it in that period of time, just the idea of, oh, you know, it's TBC, my character is mostly maxed out, I've finally got through Sunwell after 17,000 years of Muru or whatever it was the blocker for people. Yep. Now I actually have new and interesting goals, and there are levels of dynamicism within the open world experience, right? If you tell me that I could have that for Wrath of the Lich King, you know, just more stuff in Northrend, I will be there. right? And for me, that does mean I'm advocating for creating new mounts that were not in the Burning Crusade and putting them in the Burning Crusade plus after the classic TBC run ends. I'd advocate for the same in all of them. And there's a way too where, you know, you could even do that in a way that makes the lore better, to fill in the gaps, you know, actually let us spend some more time in those areas at those periods of time. You could do that in a way that would not disrupt the lore, that would only make it more rich and to give people more to play. And I guess it's then, if they can just take the great theme parks that all of those games are, and then just add in those sandboxy elements, I just think that would be such a winner.
Yeah, that's interesting. So like to sort of more visually get that is like instead of like, you know, you start off classic and by the end of the classic you're up here. Don't extend classic plus like this. Extend it like this.
Yeah.
So it's just maybe there's some new content, but it's not like actually scaling up any further. You're not on the gear treadmill anymore. You're just actually playing the game with what you've got. And especially if that can mean that like that's an expanded experience for people who hit 60. So it's not this like super linear like solved path of get this gear from here, get carried through next, I guess, whatever else for gear. It's just more sandboxy stuff. I do struggle to imagine what that could actually be in a couple places, especially in TBC where Outland's a little bit more packed with stuff. I'm sure there's a couple areas that I'm done not thinking of that are barren, but the idea of like taking the time in a classic era that's already done and then sandboxing it to add stuff that was, I guess this is more back to the original Classic Plus sort of debates where it's like, you never really did finish Farrelast, did you, Blizzard? Give that a bit of love there.
Yeah.
Why has Winter Spring got a handful of quests in it? You know, where like fill out Desolus a bit more, kind of add those little things here and there. That would be it's so interesting.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that is improving and adding in a way where it still is a theme park game.
Yeah.
What I'd really like to think about is how can they make that feel more sandboxy, and that is really hard.
Yeah.
You know, because things that can make it feel sandboxy is like the economy, and that is pretty damn strong in both classic. I mean, it's actually quite strong in, most of the WoW expansions. Yeah. I'd say before, WoD happens, and then WoD makes professions very, very, very strange. Yeah. Are there other sandboxy elements? Look, I'm not 100% on what that could be.
Yeah.
But I would like to see what happens if a Blizzard team sits down, plays old school RuneScape for a long time, and just tries to see, what are the inspirations that they as WoW developers get when they play this other game, and is there any way that could apply? Because it also would solve a problem from Blizzard. Classic happens, it ends, now it's done. It's done. And for a bunch of people who just want to spend more time in Classic, they now are not able to do that short of rolling alts. But then it's that thing where, what would happen if WoW Classic went on for 4 years with no updates? It would become very stale.
Yeah.
The progression would not really work as much. You'd have a bunch of role players, I guess, but it's hard to see that working. So a way to keep those... Now that characters are moving, from Classic to TBC, or paying for a clone. Is Classic dead and an old product now?
Yeah, I can't speak too much to how private server behavior was, but as far as I'm aware, private servers never stayed around for long enough for people to have super end games, especially untouched. I feel like people did a lot of like restarts and a lot of hopping between servers and all that stuff. It's like, I don't want to bring Ascension into it because I've not played very much of it, but that's like, if you're a Classic player, you'd probably end up just wanting to go to an Ascension-like experience, which is Classic but very different.
Yeah. But there's a few people like Nezuru saying, why take inspiration only from Old School RuneScape, where the other big MMO in the room is doing just as great or better? The reason I say that is Old School RuneScape is far less of a theme park MMO. It is more sandboxy. That basically just means you set up the systems and players can make their own fun for a humongous amount of time, versus a sandbox or a theme park MMO where you constantly have to keep it fed with content. And that, I think, doing that and giving us the version of Gadgetzan that is, not quite mean Streets of Gadgetzan, but it's getting on its way. That would be really cool. But I think it's the sandboxy elements that would allow Blizzard to set those games up to be better for more longevity in a way where they then don't have to have a big development team for every single different SKU of Classic.
Yeah, it's fundamentally about changing the approach that the games were originally designed with, where Classic, it takes forever to play and has like years of content in it, but that's because all the content takes forever to do, and there's loads of it. It's kind of low quality overall, but there is loads of it to do. But that's finite.
Yeah.
Whereas if you just if you just throw a load of toys in the middle and have the correct interactions between these toys and other players, almost like how PvP is constantly can constantly evolve, but PD doesn't. It has an endpoint where you kill the boss and it's done. And PvP is like, two players constantly evolving strategy, where it's leaning in on elements like that to kind of shift things up, especially if they figure out a way to shift things up with like regular patches that just change the dynamics of the toys to make them more interesting.
Yeah, like Paul asks, what would the Classic purists say about that? To which I'd say, being a purist about Classic is relevant up until the gap between Naxxramas and TBC pre-patch. I'd then say plus maybe 6 months or something like that, because very few people actually reach Nax because it took so damn long. But there's just this thing where, Classic is no longer Classic if it's been running for 4 years, 2 years of which have just been in the state of Nax, and all the players have got up to the top and now there's nothing to do. Yeah. And I'd say that anything that makes it, sandboxifies it or adds in like just little bits of content here and there and things to do, it would be very important that that is not messing up the gearing experience or, providing modern-esque feeling catch-up systems and stuff like that. I think that would be not good for those games. The essence absolutely has to be Classic and TBC, etc. It's just, is there anything more that we could do once we hit the final patch of each, basically?
I guess the only thought that comes to my head immediately for what we could do is things that involve the world state shifting, which I imagine the inspiration came because I was thinking about, when I said Deathless earlier, I started thinking about the Centaur clans.
Yeah.
It's the kind of thing where maybe you could do a kind of the War of the Shifting Sands kind of idea, where it's not necessarily faction-based opposition, but it's a kind of, you pick a side in this fight, and then you push one way or the other through PvP or PvE. I guess the case where, like, as a weird example, it's like, Ashenvale gets, pushed back between Horde and Alliance based on how much each side can donate to the war effort through systems that kind of exist. You could do it with a variety of stuff, but like even gold donations would, ultimately have that kind of players have to act to bring the gold into the economy to generate it, and then there's a sink, and that's like a kind of, you can see how the funnel of gold in player stuff, gold out could be this like eternal thing. Yeah. That if you did that, obviously it wouldn't be Alliance versus Horde, because that would be ruined on most Classic servers as far as I'm aware. But you could get away with that between like neutral factions or something like that. That's a kind of thing where it's constantly pulling and shifting and changing.
Yeah, that, or even, just adding in more cosmetic reps like the dudes, the big furry dudes, the furry chickens.
Moonkins?
The Moonkins, the Moonkin rep. Yeah. The Owlbear rep. It's near winter or spring.
Were they owlbears? In my head, they're furbolgs.
Furbolgs, yes. What am I talking about? Yeah.
I was really confused. I was like, what?
Just adding in new reps that, they could actually just experiment and have some fun with them. Yeah. In a way where it wouldn't throw the whole game off. I don't think there's too much more to really say on this topic, to be honest.
No. Just wishful thinking.
Yeah, it's a bunch of wishful thinking, but I think it's also, I think it's wishful thinking that would make Blizzard a lot of money, and also for a bunch of people would make them feel like it's, actually a worthwhile endeavor to go near Classic, because, the end is not the end, and there's a sort of legs to it.
Oh, can I have just a quick sidebar? Can I have classic World of Warcraft Warlords of Draenor where we actually get Shattrath, please?
Never.
I honestly just thought, which expansion would I like to see more sort of plus stuff in, and it's sadly Warlords.
In a way, yeah, I can see that. I mean, Warlords certainly fought with you less than future expansions would, so I could totally see people wanting to hop in there.